Well, welcome to the Mindful Man Project. Today I have the legend John Clayton. John and I have known each other now for a few months. We met through a group of epic men called Uncom Success, and there's epic things being done at Uncom. And since meeting John, getting to know John via Zoom, we've found that we've had a lot in common, coming from our rugby league backgrounds, mental health, and just being dads and being on a different journey. So, welcome, John.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. And I think the tie over here is a lot of we've both worked on mind, mental game, and taken that to the next level since we've finished football and performance arenas. So it'd be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, man. I even just like pretty much diving into that rugby league kind of background. For myself, I feel like where I am now, had I have had the skills and stuff that I had now, then like
Hmm.
I think my game would have been completely different. The way I played, way I recovered. I don't know whether you might feel that or different.
No, completely agree. Do you know what I've thought though of like if I was went back in time and I told myself, I think I'd still struggle to listen to the later version of me that knew better. Because it was almost like you had to keep everything consistent, and if you changed too much, maybe everything would fall down. That
Mm,
was how where my headspace was.
yeah.
So it'd be a tough conversation. What would you say to the old version of yourself if you were like, these things work? How do you get that first little seed? How do you plant it?
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. I always think of that as well. And because it's also like obviously knowing meditation and stuff now, and kind of where it might have that misconception of being a softer, it makes you softer, and then obviously then that might be a detriment to your game.
Mm,
Performance wise, seeing what the 1% and the critical moments where I've been able to um, make a decision on the fly, or and so as an athlete, I think that's how I would have to come to me is like say it's going to get you like if you're in the moment where you're about to crack someone and get sent off, like your mind might say, oh yeah, no, actually I shouldn't probably do that. Or if I go to raise an elbow or head high someone, it's probably not a good idea. Let's go a little bit different. Doesn't mean I don't think I would be any harder on the any less harder on the footy field,
mm.
but I don't know. What about you? How would you pitch it to your yourself?
I'm same. I would need like some hard research and probably some other people's experiences to see how it's worked for them. Like if you saw like Jonathan Thurston or someone like that going, the secret to my thing was that I'm going to be meditating for 10 years. It would probably be like I'm going to give this a crack. But then I might like to see some data. I think science is great, but I think it's too much like general population, like because you need sample sizes. So you're like, well, it worked for 200 out of 250 people. Is that going to work for me, or is it going to give me elite outcomes? So my mind would be like, I want to see someone who's been at the top do this
Yeah.
sort of stuff and see how it works for them. Which there are examples now for sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, not so much in footy, but like
Mm,
Kelly Slater's the number one that I jumps out at me. Like that guy's won
mm,
11 world titles, and he's been meditating for years. So um,
mm,
that keeps him in the flow. But contact sport
mm,
wise, I'm not sure.
mm,
I know Tom Brady does, but obviously that's a different type of contact sport. But it's pretty heavy contact sport. So, um, yeah, I don't know.
mm.
Have you heard of anyone else? Oh, well, obviously, Djokovic. Also, he's
Yep, I was about to say him.
yeah. So
Mm,
there is guys out there at the top who are doing it. So yeah,
mm. Interesting area. I know we'll probably tie back with in a sec, but on like when people think of like meditation and building like mindfulness is almost like a muscle. The span of attention is an interesting one. I looked into some of the research on it, and it was if they trained long distance runners mindful body awareness and that was all, they actually reduced their performance.
Yeah.
because as they ran, they were like much more aware of pain, discomfort, everything else. They were like just in that. And the span of attention is really important. That's something that I work with people with, like, I don't want to be more mindful of this or that or distracted. You're like, no, you change it to be like, oh, what's the performance or goal criteria of what you're working on? You focus in on that. What's your focal object? It's not like I want to experience everything. I want to feel the full experience. It's like, yeah, bring that narrowness in when you need it. Bring it out when there's pain, like other things, so that you can allow it as well. So
Mm.
that's a. What's your thoughts on probably focal objects is an interesting area, and probably the shortness or the width of attention.
Yeah, I feel the same, there is that, yeah, being off with the fairies kind of like up in the ether kind of thing, and then there is that like having a practice where, yeah, you can come back and actually have a laser focus, that your mind and is all operating at a higher level, that you can then create those critical decisions, rather
Mm.
than, and actually being in the flow of it, rather than being off with the, like, and disappearing and going, oh, like I'm hurting here, or look, there's a bird, but it's like, yeah, like you use that runner, like
Mm.
just one foot in the, like in the front of the other,
Mm.
like, going for a run, you just get in the zone. So it's like being able to,
Mm.
like, um empower people to, and teach people that direct kind of access to it, when, especially when stuff starts to show up, it's like, no, come back,
Yeah.
rather than going off with everything and going, oh, I'm starting to get a stitch, or I'm starting to get cramps. Come back to what the goal is, and it's me to get to that finish line. And how can I
Mm.
now, if I'm getting a cramp, what can I do about it? Okay, I could probably take some sustenance or whatever it is while I'm on my marathon run and keep going.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's.
So looking at that message when it is there, not ignoring everything or distracting from everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, I totally agree. The interesting one, I work a bit with one of the footy sides locally, and rugby league. And one of the things we've found is, and you'd see this, it's when there's a repeat set of defence. It's often when a try gets in, tiredness, everything else, but it's also stupid mistakes when the tiredness hits. It's like gone out of like a window of tolerance, and it's all of a sudden you can't remember to follow the stuff. And the more experienced guys are better at just doing habit and repeat. But what we started to train in with some of the guys, and it came from the coach and from a couple of things, was this acronym BREAD, and especially after they've scored a try and things. So we go breathe, respond, engage, decisive action. So what we would do is it's always starts with breath, and even though like breath work mindfulness is different, we use breath as like a that's your focal object to bring your attention back, so that
Mhm.
they weren't just like everything else. Respond was what's just happened, take some cues if there's information. Engage was then about what choosing how you want to turn up next. It wasn't like I want to not feel uncomfortable. It was I want to make the next tackle. I want to scramble, whatever it is, and then decisive action is doing.
Mm.
Because I feel like sometimes we can get a bit too stuck in this level of stuff, whereas it's like get back into it and actually do what you're talking about. You don't do it just for the sake of it, especially when it's like performance stuff.
Mm. Absolutely, and you kind of end up redlining even more, because you're not actually cognizant of what everything else is going on, and you're just like acting out of just pure almost fight or flight. It's like, I've got to get this shit done. I've got to, rather than just, yeah, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
taking that breath, then that respond and dropping back into what is actually occurring in front of you. Okay, cool. We've got another set of six. Let's um
Mm.
let's step it up. Everybody's here doing the same thing. We're on the same page. I'm not going to have to try and cover his ass. Like, everybody's doing the same thing. We know we're on the same page, and we move forward. And um,
Mm.
yeah, I think that's cool. I really like that, and the acronym, because it's essentially what I teach in my meditation is breath, and then a mantra, which is then centers you back into your body. Then that allows you then
Mm.
to come out of that reactive state and into a responsive state. So eyes open experience, that would be it. It's like rather than sitting in and going and dropping into a meditation on the field, you're just like, okay, we're going to respond. This is the way we're going to go, and your mind is able to put that systems and processes in place a lot faster than being in that fight or flight stage and going out of control. So yeah, I like that. And how's it been going for the team?
It was good. They even got bracelet bands made where they put the acronym on. They became one of those things. I was surprised when we first started doing it. You get like your champions for things, especially because there were some senior boys who were willing to try. They were a bit, they do the mouth tape and they're willing to try different things, ice baths, all that, Wim Hof. But those guys went for it. There's always like some of your crew that are very like, this is how we do things. We're not going to change. But luckily, the senior guys had it, so it grew in, and it was interesting to see like they'd let a try in, and they'd sit behind the post, and they'd be all doing a breath together, like that. They're the sort of moments where you go, you actually have an impact, or people actually listening to some of this stuff, and yeah, it's pretty cool. But they did well last year, the boys. And look, there's multiple factors, but I do think there's a lot of untapped resource in how you respond to setbacks, especially within a game. And I don't think many clubs teach as much as they can. There's a lot of like punitive punishments type stuff. Like you make a mistake, we go and do Malcolms or we do push-ups or whatever else,
Yeah,
and which is true. It's like it matches the game, but then it teaches like this like self-critical, especially if someone's done it. They're like, we're doing Malcolms because of Steve who didn't finish his last pass, and you're like, you just get that, so you're
yeah,
getting like a negative response.
yeah,
So I feel like there's a lot of space where teams could grow better by having better responses to setbacks, which is like mindfulness. There's like exploring what cues are there, making their next action something that's actually going to make an impact on the game rather than trying to avoid further punishment or avoid mistakes, things like that. Interesting topic, anyway.
yeah. I think it's also like it's a nice topic to go on. Like even the connection piece between players and all coaching staff. To rather than going into that tyrant and peasant kind of thing where you like the athlete then gets like punished for doing whatever it's done wrong is like actually like having that connection to them and go, okay, what do you feel that went wrong there? It's like, oh,
Mm,
I missed a step, or I missed the start. I missed the start of the play, and then that's where I was concentrating somewhere else, and then like I missed it, and then that's why I missed it. Like so, then people become a little bit more
mm,
aware of what their role is, but then they're not actually getting like blown up at. Okay, cool. Don't do
mm,
that. Like, let's not do that again. Let's get on with it and respond in a different way rather than getting punished. Because then, what does it do? Like by the end of your session, you're absolutely
mm,
redline. You're flogged because you've done 50 Malcolms, and you walk off the field going, I don't want to like that's like I'm gonna have to bounce back from this session rather than walking off
mm,
going, okay, I know I've done this is the reason why I've done something like that. I need to focus on my concentration at the breakdown of a play so that I'm ready to go again. Um, I feel like though that's where I think a lot of teams could be. Oh, yeah, I was like not subjected to the Malcolms, but like we did a lot of preseason punishment when we weren't doing the stuff right, and there was never fun for it. Wasn't fun. Like it took the fun out of doing like as I'd rather be working on my craft and honing it rather than getting flogged because I've done that. So but horses for courses, and there could be one coach's or one coaching staff way of doing it, and others are doing a different way.
yeah, different levels. Like it's still the main approach, I think. My very much my belief is there's another way. It's just harder, and the coaches need to be more centered themselves, and they need to be like leading this stuff, responding differently when a mistake happens. Because this is probably ties back into the model I teach. Is everything gets conditioned. So you get like there's a behavioral analysis. We go A B C antecedent, which is like what happens before behavior, consequence. Consequence just means result. And when we look at that, when you say what triggers it is that the player tries something and makes a mistake, the behavior is reprimand from the coaching staff. The response then is either adaptive or maladaptive, often. And if we look at this, the response is from the coaches that the criticism. So the end response is that the player either stops making mistakes and trying things that are expanding their skill set, or they possibly, if it's adaptive, they learn the response and they get better at it. But if it happens too often, it's experiential avoidance. It's a shrinking of experience where you get these teams that are unwilling to try new things. And in a really interesting area, Keegan Smith's brother, Rowan Smith, he's done a bit of coaching in the Queensland Cup. I think he's over with one of the Super League sides now. He's got a free course inside of the community we're involved in. And one of his things is that the way he looks at defense is that he doesn't defend to win in defense. He defends so that he can attack more. He can be more experimental in attack. And I love that approach because I'm like, too many teams are like trying to defend in a way that's like, we just have to do this, where he's like, we defend so we can try more things. It's like, this is a response to, so we can be more experimental, we can be more curious and try things that maybe give us results. But anyway, that was what I meant about experiential. If you can build acceptance, which I'm sure you could agree is a part of like the mindfulness meditation approach. And my model is around building that as a skill, so teaching people skills to develop. And then you're more willing. The willingness increases to try things because you're not like avoiding your own internal experience.
And, so do you think that it would have a tie over to general everyday population as well? Like, could someone who's listening to this who doesn't play footy or whatever could actually implement that into their life, whether it's in their relationship or with their relationship with their child or something like that? Do you think?
Oh, there's so many arenas. I could probably go to parenting. Parenting one is an interesting one because for me, and you might have heard of the term like shark music. I think it comes from like Circle of Security or one of those. But it's like the the old Jaws music. And for me, it shows up when my daughter's in an unsafe environment, or a safe environment, but she's doing something like she's walking on a brick wall or a blocks or whatever. My mind starts to go, she's going to fall. And then my response is like, my shark music's going off. And then I'm like, I need to tell her to be careful and to get down or whatever else. When she's like a goat, she's as sure-footed as, but my brain's still going off. So in that moment, if I respond inflexibly to my own emotion, then I'm likely to say something like, we don't climb on walls, or get down, be more careful, all these things that are probably not helpful for her, and teach her that I don't think she's being safe. So experiential acceptance would be using a tool. The easiest one I teach people is name it to tame it. So just labeling the emotion. This is, even if you say the story like, this is my shark music showing up, or this is my this is fear, it just reduces the impact of it. And then you can go, okay, how do I want to turn up? Well, how would I rather respond to this? So parenting, you'd be dealing with it like, it brings up everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, man. That's a great concept there, because it's like, obviously you got a little boy and he's climbing on stuff and doing all sorts of things, and there is that moment, like, hey, that's dangerous, or don't do that, you might hurt yourself. But it's like, now I've actually like started implementing, just even saying, hey, do you think that's safe? And if he says yes, I'm like, all right, no worries, go for it. I'll just continue to watch. Like, I'll continue to watch you. All right, you feel safe.
Yeah.
You feel good. I'm watching you, and like, if anything goes pear shaped, then that's now we're going to learn from that, and hopefully it's not a massive learning. But like, again, it's like allowing and empowering them, I feel, to actually know what they're doing in that space. And then, like you said, takes your shark music down. It's like, all right, he feels good about it. Like, I know that him standing on the edge of the bath is probably going to end in a slip or a something or other. And then I offer a solution. Okay, if you want to stand on the edge of the bath, can I hold your hands? All right, great. So he's still getting that experience. He's still getting that kind of learning of, there's this slippery surface is underneath me, but I'm supporting him
Mm,
whilst removing some of that anxiety, I guess, as a parent, and
mm,
allowing him to actually continue to learn about himself and the different things that he's got going on. So yeah,
yeah.
I like that way.
Yeah, and I think you nailed the nuance there, which is we're not letting them be unsafe. Like if there's safety issues, be curious. It's more like that over response internally from my own experience
Mm.
and how we've been parented and how my parents have been parented and all that downloading type stuff. Try and
Yeah,
interrupt some of that rather than being like, yeah, kids will hurt themselves. I don't mind a crack in a head, although I don't mind it sometimes. It's
right.
such a good teacher experience.
Yeah, it is. It's like that. It's like that classic Lion King where Rafiki hits Simba across the back of their head with that stick, and it's like literally like I told you so, but you had to learn it yourself. So it's like that kind of thing. Like if they like, I'm not
That's
saying
brilliant.
child's going to go out and break their arm or whatever like that, but like at the
Mm,
end of the day, if we had a discussion prior to coming on air, it's like um,
mm,
being left to their own devices and being left to their own device is a difference. And it's like
mm,
if you can leave them to
mm,
their own devices and just watch and observe and see how they're interacting with their environment,
mm,
it's amazing. And again, that ties back into everything that we've just already been talking about. It's like as a coach
mm,
or as a player or someone who's in more of authority, just observing and seeing how the people move and go, okay, this is, and that I think that's where the great coaches really set themselves apart, is because they can
mm,
observe and then go like Bill Belichick over for the Patriots. Like he very rarely speaks, but and like Wayne Bennett, like these
mm,
guys know how to talk to their men and get the best out of them when they need to get the talk out or get out of them. And I think it's the same as being parent. Well, I could be wrong, but that's just what's really working for us at the moment, is just observing and then stepping in when you need to. And that's the hardest part. The
mhm,
hardest part about being a parent is like you want to make sure that they're okay. And then there's that kind of line in the sand where you become a helicopter parent and you just kind of
mhm,
following them around, or you just kind of take a step back and just allow it to happen, watch them
mhm,
climb a tree and do their thing. And um,
mm.
yeah, and I think as dads, will tie into here like the men's mental health, and it's men's mental health week. It's
Yeah.
like a lot of dads kind of sometimes get that a little bit of a shock to the system when they become a father and they're trying to find their feet. And it's like um you with that, you girls for instance, like did you find have you found that like the way you parent with a girl, like it's you completely different to what you might have been exposed to, obviously being a male, and like having parents raising a male. Like do you feel like you're parenting differently or consciously differently?
I wouldn't know. I mean, it sounds logical that because I'm a male and my parents raised me that I'd remember what that was like, but I don't really know like the bits in between. I know some of the responses during that time, but I can't remember exactly. So I didn't copy them. But my in-laws are very active with her, and probably something I noticed early on was that I had intentions around how I wanted to parent. Very much based off some of this person-centered approach type stuff. I really like that, like holding space, all this type of thing. I noticed pretty quickly I was there was some responsive type stuff. Like they do this, I do that, and if I say it 3 times, then I blow my lid. I like, and it doesn't sound great saying it out loud, but I had this sort of internal rule where if I've said it twice, the third time I raise my voice. I don't know where that came from, but that was something that I found just playing out. And but the in-laws, especially father-in-law, he's very very patient. Like he's next level patient. He will. She can do the wrong thing 10 times. He'll play games for hours on end and just walk around and like cut flowers off, and they're like he's in his prized garden. Like doesn't care. But but I found that my patience wasn't something. So that's been a value I've been chasing in parenting more, especially because I can see it in someone and see that that's something I appreciate and it's something I didn't have. So that's been my approach, has been looking at different parents. Keegs was another one. He had this playfulness he did with puppets, Keegan Smith, and he was like doing that, and I was like, I got to give that a try. So we got some puppets, and now it's one of the favorite things. I can't escape it anymore. Puppet each hand, puppet on the feet, and then they've all got to talk in different voices. Oh, it's insane. And the funny thing is, though, sometimes I'll be like, I can't remember the voice, and I'll get told off. That's not the voice that one does.
Yeah,
Kids.
I know that
But,
feeling,
but
man.
yeah,
The
yeah,
it's pretty cool. Like the to have the self-realization, I guess, is the biggest thing, is as a dad, as a parent, is having a realization of like your interaction or your part in that, and like that, like noticing that you had that 1 2 3 and raise your voice situation. It's a big thing for me, especially as a dad, and it's like River's becoming a little boy, and he's really pushing Emma a lot more than what he pushes me. But I don't generally, like, I very rarely raise my voice to him, but there seems to be, there's that kind of that masculine energy, or he knows that this is the boundary with, I hold that boundary. Um, and I feel like sometimes, yeah, that it's coming back to play, I feel, as well. Like every time there's something going on and we're trying to get them to mold into our way of thinking, we forget that they're only 2 4 5 6 up until about 7. Is like they're still in that really playful mind, like they're off with the fairies, and it's like we're trying to bring them back into our, like, this is the only way we can do it. We've got to get out the door, like, and they're trying to stack their bricks, like really mindful. And you're just like, all right, just take a moment, take a breath. Like, I should have left 15 minutes ago. I should have tried to leave 15 minutes earlier, so I knew that this situation happens. And then putting processes in place, like, I know for myself, like Riv, some like he's a slow starter. Like he'll get up in the morning, he plays, he run down and um get his banana, puts his fireman hat on for the first thing in the morning, and he becomes his fireman Riv all morning. And like the last week or so, we have been struggling to get him out of his pajamas, and we're like, we need to go down the street. Not, it's all right, in the car you go in your pajamas, because it's like I'm allowing him to be himself, but also
mm,
we do need to keep up our responsibilities.
yeah,
So, if you want to wear your pajamas out, mate, you wear your pajamas out. And it's that thing. It's like he's happy, he's comfortable until he probably gets to a certain age. He goes, "Holy shit, why did I wear my pajamas down the street?" But whatever. Um, but
mm,
then he still likes getting dressed up. But I think, yeah, that, like, the introducing the games, the story about Keegan's thing is like there's one book we have, and it's the same thing. There's 4 different characters, and I can nail every one of, like, it's just like the dog, the frog, the cat, and another, and a duck. I get, they've all got their own characters. If you slightly have a nuance in the sound of how you're talking, it's like, and so Emma tries to do it, and her accents go completely like mismatched. And River's like, no, that's not the dog. No, that's not the cat. So it's like, yeah,
uh,
it's
I
funny.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, play's an interesting topic. I I was just talking to one of the guys, Ben Ruan, and Ben's was talking about doing snatches, and I was like, oh, because he's trying to build his squat. I'm like, oh, why are you doing that? And he's like, it's not actually an efficient way to do it. I just enjoy doing different movements and like collecting new patterns. And it made me think, I was like, play is something we gamify, but it's still about performance and reaching new things. But like play is such an important part of what we do for kids, obviously, but as adults as well. What's your take on that, Dill? Like, do you make time for play? Do you purposefully like explore, do things that with no intention? You know what I mean?
Yeah, at the moment, like most of my play is through with what I do with Riv, and I actually really enjoy it. I
Mm,
enjoy just not having to think, like, of all the stuff that I'm doing, and just like, and we live on property here, so We go and play down in the river. We go and play, and it's just me being in his world. But then that being said, like I love surfing. Like that's my play. I'll go for a surf when I can get down there and just be in the ocean, and that's my play. I haven't done too much like on rock climbing. Rock climbing and surfing are like my two things that I use as play. Like I just love doing them. They're fun. And then even at home, like we've got instruments and stuff all around the house. Like none of us can really. Well, Emma can play the flute pretty well, and the harmonium, but we play music, and some of it sounds like terrible, and others are just. And I'm starting to learn the guitar at 38, and like it's enjoyable. Like I love being able to hit those chords, and um, yeah, it creates a lightness. And then we even sometimes just fool around at home, just like shake ourselves and be have a full on dance party at home, and it's cool. Like it releases. You feel the energy releasing. It becomes lighter, and then the whole family becomes lighter, and the seriousness of your life and whatever else is going on pretty much melts away, and it gives you a pretty quick perspective shift for sure. What about yourself?
Yeah, yeah, pretty a lot of alignment there. Same. It's been I've done a lot more since I've had a kid. A lot more play. It was permission's probably a good word. Permission to be silly, to do this stuff because you're like, no one cares. I've got a kid. I'm just playing along with the kid. Especially this is going to sound really like a millennial, but I really enjoyed the Bluey stuff. Like, because Bluey, I know it's a show, but it's almost like a model of like they play so much and it's all about like they come up with games and make believe and all this sort of thing. And it felt like again permission to be silly in public and do silly games and pretend to be. But I think there is a shift with men going on at the moment. We're talking about the mental health stuff as well, where it's the windows shifting to talk about being a dad and being a valuable and male energy. Like there's always a swing with this stuff. It swung a different direction for a while. I think it's swinging back where people go. There's a space for that masculine energy. There's a correction in for especially for young boys to have a father figure that like lives that. I think the other areas might be like rituals coming of age for men, um, male role models, mateship. That some of that has become fragmented, especially with online and things like that.
Mm.
And if I was to give one plug, I'm actually missing the group this morning, but we I help run a group for Grab Life by the Balls, Sammy Parker based in Sunshine Coast. It's running international, like nationally at the moment, but every week he runs a group. It's called the Mateship Movement, and it's just a group of men that get together and have coffee or have a barbie. And
That's
the whole
cool.
thing is that, yeah, and it's like low entry. I think sometimes we can complicate things like men's group. We get together, we talk about what's wrong or whatever else. It's like, no. We talk about whatever. We just have coffee, and then if something goes wrong, you've got six guys you can talk to.
Mm.
That's the shift. But I really like that, and being the week it is at the moment, it's important to have that chat.
Absolutely, man. I think like it's great with that because especially when it's shared over like a coffee or a barbecue, and there's no like. For me, it's a big thing of
Mm,
like removing alcohol and removing those kind of vices that kind of could draw
mm,
us into like more of a spiral. Um,
mm-hmm,
and yeah, it's an awesome thing to have like a resource because I I've been on Facebook. I don't hate Facebook, and I got on Facebook like to go into some men's groups to see like these are the people that I want to access and help.
mm,
And the big thing and the alarming thing that really spoke out and stood out to me was the amount of kind of enabling that occurred amongst men that like say for instance a guy posted on one of these Facebook groups like I've been at work for like I'll go to work for 12 hours like I leave home at 5 I don't see my kids I get home I'm getting yelled at um, none of my family like respect what I'm doing. And by the weekend, they're just trying to take all my money. Like, what do you guys expect? And they're like, oh, mate, just grab a drink and like go out on the balcony and
Mm.
like and sit there and just
Forget about it.
relax and like or they kind of just enable it and enable that victim kind of state rather than
Mm-hmm.
kind of empowering the dude to kind of like say, well, look, how can you actually make the changes like that you need to make in your life to actually step forward. And that's one thing
Mm.
like I'm finding like you're touching on like that initiation and stuff like that. It's like Uncom also is doing that because it's like it's allowing
Mm-hmm.
guys to see the potential in their life outside of what they're doing. And we
Mm.
don't have, and sometimes as men we think we have to we've got to provide, and well, that is our main, one of our main goals is, especially if that is
Mm.
our role within the relationship. Because Emma and I had a relationship masterclass recently, and one of the things that we talked about is the values and also the roles within roles within the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes
Mm-hmm.
for any relationship. It's like, what is your role in that? And if you know the
Mm-hmm.
role and you know, okay, well, I'm going to be the provider for the next 7 years, and then you can go back to work and you stay at home with the
Mm-hmm.
kid. All right, so now how can we now based around our values, and you're like the value action man, like you're like you know this yourself. It's like once you if you I'd be interested to see is like whether your family has a set of family values, whether like then they help to tie into your own personal values, because that's the big thing is like when we know our own personal values and like you value
Mm.
personal space or you value fun time, you value being
Mm.
able to see your friends, when we can do that and then relate to our partner and go, okay, look, I value my own personal space. I need 20 minutes or
Mm-hmm.
so after work to just have some time before I come home, before I'm getting yelled at. I know your values are um, relaxation and blah, 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 blah. Why don't you go and run yourself a warm bath or whatever it is that you want when I get home? And then that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you've met and you've created an equilibrium.
Mm.
Yes, I'm interested. Like, do you have like obviously you've got personal values, like, but within the
Another
relationship,
relationship.
yeah.
I don't think we've built relationship values, which is interesting. We've both got our personal values, and we're both pretty clear about those. That would be something would be cool to do. I forget what the book's called, but we did this book where it was exploring all the domestic duties and breaking those up and looking at that type of thing. And that's similar to looking at what's your role, that type of stuff. Probably the same thing you hit on was that I like to have I have this thing in the afternoon. I like to like I finish work, I go and do my 45-minute row, and that helps me clear my head. It's an indoor rower, and I clear my head, and that way I'm not turning up at home being you know in my work mode. And but that's a big commitment. So I'm like, how do we work that out together? My partner goes for a walk in the morning with a friend, so she
Mm.
gets that block of time. I do the breakfast and da, da, da. So it's a you're hitting on like if we were to draw it back slightly, the men that are like, oh, I'm away 7 days or 5 days a week. I come home and I'm getting in trouble. And look, there's definitely people in situations where there might be some unfairness,
Mm.
but there's also plenty of opportunities where people have put the blinkers on and they go, this is just what I do, rather than exploring, like you said, values and whatever else. I really do think the blinkers come from, and this is something I know that you've done a bit of work on too, but the blinkers come from the fact that we have these really harsh inner critics and we're unwilling to handle our own realities because our minds look through a pinhole and see things as like much worse than they are. Like I can't be criticized. I'm out working all week. I can't be criticized. I can't do anything wrong. Therefore, I'm going to ignore it and go home and have a drink or whatever.
Mm.
So self compassion, I think for most men is the starting point. It's just such an ethereal, difficult topic.
Yeah.
Unwilling, some people unwilling to experience and work through. The I've started to find through my looking at, and for me, to be fair, it's only been like less than 12 months I've been working on this, so I'm by no means an expert, but it's been the biggest shift for me. So that's why I'm like, I'd love to talk about it and see what your experience is there too. But once you build that, it's like self awareness. It's a willingness to try things and be wrong and be a work in progress. So you don't have to get it right straight away. You can ask questions, and if we're talking family stuff, figure it out together. It's a willingness to understand too that lots of men are going through the same thing, and it doesn't mean that you're broken or there's anything wrong if you're not haven't got it all figured out yet.
Mm.
Like, you can be a dad who's getting better. If I over identified when I make a mistake with my daughter, then I'd be pretty disappointed because it's important to me. Whereas I'm like, I know that I get better as a dad each time I be a dad and be involved and do that work. And I know that plenty of dads are going through that as well. It's not a it's not a fixed thing, especially in relationship too. It's like, this is a work in progress. Everything's constantly shifting, adapting, getting better, and wherever I am is okay. And
Absolutely.
yeah, but that's been the big shift for me. It's been a huge movement, and I'd love to see your thoughts. What do you find? Where have you come from? Do you done a bit of self compassion work, or in your relationship, or on yourself
Yeah,
for the work you do?
it's a work in progress, you know. Like
Mm,
obviously, uh, going from on just learning from my experience with my dad and learning
mm,
and how even I've had to learn a lot of unlearn a lot of behaviors. No, I should say, because like my dad was is a builder, and when I'd go to work with him, he'd come home and he'd like almost just grunt at my mum. And she'd go, "How you
mm,
guys going?" So I kind of became that. Like like get home from school or get home from going out to work, like, yeah, all right.
mm,
So it's like that kind of relationship kind of began to be formed in my head. So that's something I've been really aware of and really conscious of in our
mm.
relationship. And then obviously when I do get tired, I do get a little bit grunty and a little bit, and it's like, no, you're slipping back into that kind of that learned behavior, and it's I've been able to be more conscious of it. And yeah,
Mm,
there is definitely times where I've done like where I kind of catch myself in certain instances where, oh no, that's not actually servicing or bettering
mm.
our relationship, where like you said, like the ego kind of gets involved, and the ego like,
Yeah.
I don't want to hear this because this is not what I believe in. And then you got to take that breath, and then it's like that
Mm,
reaction, you're going to respond to a certain situation and then create what you're doing from that. And um that's, yeah, the one thing that I find has been a really big thing for our relationship, the big thing with even with River, is listening and actively listening. So it's like, listen to what the person is giving you and not taking it on board to the point where, like, if you think it's a dagger to the heart because it's your ego getting hit.
mm-hmm,
But it's like, and if that person's
mm-hmm,
delivering it and the person's delivering it to you in a way that is from a loving point of view. Like for me, like when we talk about, okay, you hurt my like this when you did this,
mm,
when you did this, it made me feel this. Now
mm-hmm,
it's not any of your issue, but when you did this, it made me feel this. But can we work through that? And it's the same thing
mm-hmm,
with like with when we talk to Riv. It's like when you're doing that, that
mm-hmm,
makes us feel this way. Like it's not no responsibility of his for our feelings, but he's
mm-hmm.
now getting to like, that made me cranky when you wouldn't listen to what I was trying to get you to do.
That's
Like,
amazing.
you know, so then we're just allowing that kind of open communication, I think. And I think sometimes
Mm,
that's also, yeah, like he's coming back to the blinkers. It's like the blinkers go on and it's like that hear no evil, speak no evil monkey, It's like we
yeah.
go over here, we go over here, we just want to be here. And then as a relationship, whether it's part like male and female, or whether it's even with your
Mm,
mates, like your mates
mm,
trying to tell you being a dickhead, and like, but they're telling you you're a dickhead rather than actually, hey mate, like this behavior that you're doing, like
mm-hmm,
you're on the slippery slope to like being sick, and that's where I like my journey. Like there's, I think like I drug and alcohol abuse for so long, and there was few times where a couple of people had pulled me aside and was like, "You've been a dickhead. Like, stop doing what you're doing." I didn't
Mm-hmm.
listen to them, and it was because I thought in that moment the ego, "No, I'm doing all right. I'm fine," you know. And eventually,
Mm,
it led to an attempted suicide. And so, like, yeah, I just even think in my life from where I have been to now, just the full
mm,
change and just like being open to, like, even if it does hurt the ego and
mm.
or your heart, like breaks your heart. Like, I don't believe in breaking of heart, but it's like it essentially is
Yeah, yeah.
breaking your ego. Um, it's being able to be okay with that, and that's a life's work for a lot of people. You know, I don't know if you feel the same way, but yeah.
For sure, man. And I resonate with your story too, and I appreciate that vulnerability because it's something. Well, it's good to make it more commonplace to have that intentional sharing where you share to not to like talk about yourself or victimize yourself, but to help other people um, feel okay with where they're at and know that this is human experience we're going through as well.
Yeah.
But for sure, oh look, I've been through some stuff with when I finished football. It was like a loss of identity, and and if I was to say where it came from for me, it was like I had a very strong inner critic, and that's why I think self compassion work recently has been so helpful. But one of the three parts of self compassion is mindfulness, and meditation is a formal practice to build mindfulness. That's the way I explore it. So if you're being mindful, you're in the moment. You're not projecting ahead. You're not looking in the past. You're here now with that person, as you said, listening, um, structuring the way you say something, not just like automatically going it in a way to win an argument, which is where a lot of this stuff comes from.
Mm.
But for me, I like that whole if you're pointing a finger at someone, you got three pointing back at yourself. And I've found since I've started doing self compassion work, I'm less critical of other people. That's probably one of the big things for me.
Mm.
People might not have known that I was, but my inner voice was often externalizing and thinking, like judging other people, comparing myself to other people, looking at them and going, where are they at? And if I can make it would try and say to me, if I can make them look worse, then I look better. That was a lot of the internal dialogue.
Mm.
And I didn't like it. I knew that it was negative and it was sucking me down. But until I was a less reactive to my own experience, it wasn't able to explore that. And that was probably where I wanted to get to with this is one of those topics is shame, especially for men. If we were to look at the reality of any situation, I feel like guilt's a useful emotion. I saw someone else say something differently recently in one of the chats we're in. Guilt is like an action signal for breaching your own values or something's gone wrong. It can overextend its reach, but I think guilt has its place. I feel like shame though is over identification with guilt. So it's like I've done something, like you were saying, behavior, or this is how I feel, like context. Shame though is like I did this, therefore I am that. I I pissed off a friend who had when I was drinking, therefore I'm a bad person. Like
Mm.
that's where I feel shame goes,
Mm.
and I feel like men, if we look at suicide and men in a lot of these situations, like you've probably seen the stats on men, it's very high for like situational suicide,
Mm.
relationship breakdown, financial issues, lost a job, things like this.
Yeah.
And there's a shame that goes with a lot of these experiences. It's a curious thing to talk to you about your experiences with shame, and then like if you don't feel comfortable, but it's for me, shame still shows up.
Mm.
It's one of those. It's the hardest thing for me, but it's the most work I have to do because it pulls me down and it tries to tell me it's the ego for sure, but it's trying to tell me I am this solid thing that's bad or wrong or broken or unable to get better. And so the freeing part of that is as soon as you start to notice the signals, let it go. It's like there's so much more space forward. There's so many more potential things. You're better with the people in your life. You're you're less stuck. I don't
Mm.
know. But what's your experience of shame?
There's same. I've kind of had it in many different iterations. And it is a work in progress, you know. And it's I feel like I've had so many of those kind of shameful moments where I've kind of, especially under the influence of alcohol and drugs, like in the next day, like, oh shit, what have I done? And then you become that bad
Mm,
person. And oh man, like people, and then
mhm,
I kind of think you kind of beat yourself up more than the people who you're actually thinking that you're shame, like you're actually done wrong. Like
mhm,
a lot of and that's what a lot of my stuff has been, what was like, and a lot of the work now that I've done, again, it's like that, like you said, the self-compassion and just being
mm,
noticed, like being aware of the thought patterns. And that's where I had struggled with like really extreme anxiety. And a lot of that anxiety came from being ashamed, like either ashamed of like what I had done or what people
mhm,
were perceiving me as, or what I wasn't being, or what I wasn't achieving to be. I was beginning to be like like that comparison to people up on their chapter 97 and you're still on your chapter 2. And I was like shaming myself on like, oh man, like you're not doing what you like what they're doing, like, and so you'd start to kind of shame. Then it's really becoming back into, no, this is my journey. I can learn off
mhm,
those people and put it in place for my journey. And that's taken them 97 attempts to get to that. I'm here. If I
mhm,
put that in place now, my my journey becomes a lot quicker because, or
mhm,
a lot better because I can now actually put that stuff in place and learn from them rather than going, I
mhm,
want to be that person or I want to be this. It's like, oh, let's take what they're doing really good and put it in place. And that's what has helped me a lot with like the kind of beating down on myself, the shameful stuff, like because it's then okay, cool. And as a male, sometimes we get into this headspace of actually shooting those people down rather than actually looking
mhm.
at them and going as a like, and especially I found in Australia, there's a lot of that tall poppy syndrome.
Absolutely.
And we don't celebrate men, we don't celebrate each other like for the experience that they're having. And then being from a place of inquiry on how to actually um, get what they're doing or be like work with what they're doing and work and then absorb everything that they got, because then if you're feeling that shame or kind of jealousy
Mhm,
from what they're doing, then need to kind of go, okay, cool, how can I actually switch this? What's the shadow side of it? Okay, cool, I can
mm,
actually grow from what I'm learning from this person. And that's been the biggest thing for me with the shame, is like looking at people who I thought were up on a higher level, shaming myself because I wasn't getting there, and actually
mhm,
flipping it on its head and going, I can learn from this. And every interaction that we have now that I have is I turn it into a learning experience. I ever sit back and watch, and that's been the big thing for me. Even being in
mhm,
relationship with Em, we go to a lot of events, and when we go to the events and we've been to events together, like I'll generally be the person kind of just observing and just rather than just kind of being in there and just trying to be the guy that was like I used to be, trying to be the guy in the front of everyone and be the person just trying to like
mm,
put the blinders on, and the anxiety and the shame's kind of taking out. I want these people to like me, but now it's kind of been more like just observe and then
mhm,
interact with my surroundings rather than and it's not being pulled back so it's so far removed that you kind of not in it. You're still in the conversation, but it's just
mhm,
observing my feelings in the things, like how am I feeling when I'm interacting with this person, and am I self-critical of them or am I being critical of them or myself? And it's,
mm,
yeah, that big kind of just little bits and pieces, just being more aware of how my thought patterns are playing out every day.
mm,
And yourself, like anxiety is that seed
mhm,
of thought that just kind of blossoms into a tree inside your mind, and then like all of a sudden it's a snowball. And so just really being able to harness that and go, okay, are these my actual real thoughts, or is this just a seed that's getting planted? And then that shame kind of begins to get pulled out of it. I think that's for
Yeah,
me.
and absolutely. And look, I would say for sure we've both got that like current moment focus, and you can get better at it and all that. I'd say for some people, you've seen this too. The shadow stuff comes a bit more invisible. Like depends on the depth of your experience, really. Like if you've had some harsh stuff, it might show up in areas you don't expect. And the things I've found useful for some people, for myself, especially when I've had some of those really hard shadow stuff, is some of those body somatic therapies. I've found them really transformative for me.
Mm.
Um, I like even like sound healing has been a big one for me. I'm the biggest skeptic. Like my missus hates me. She loves all this sort of stuff, but I don't believe in any of it. Like tarots,
Yeah.
um, star signs. It's nothing. Even some of the science I question. So I'm a bad skeptic. But I went into the sound healing and I was like, I don't believe this is going to work. And they go, in 2 days' time, you're going to feel this like huge stuff come up, and then you're going to have to work through that. And I was like, oh, over the next 2 days, whatever. Come wake up the next morning after. It was really nice. It was a nice experience, but I had just like these experiences that were beyond my normal level. It was like the barriers had been removed. All this stuff came up, and it was just really difficult. And then 2 days later, it was like I'd been on holidays for a month or so. It was just this clearinghouse experience, which is all my experiences with somatic stuff has been hard, but then a shift. Like integration would be the word I would use.
Mm.
And the only reason I raise this is I think sometimes if we're responding in the moment, all my work I do with people, if anyone looks at the valued action stuff, is in the moment, the current experience, so that you can shift and change. But if you find you've got some deep seated stuff that's sitting there, there's some other people that can do some deeper work with you. And having that safe space where you can explore that with someone can help probably shed some of these layers at times too. If you do get stuck, find a new way. As long as you're curious, there's always a solution, eh?
Mm. Absolutely. And like as the seeker, it's like seeking, but also being not so going all the way out to try and seek everything and
Mm-hmm.
spiritually bypassing whatever it is to actually come back to yourself, to actually sit with what's going on and then being, and that's the ultimate thing, like yourself, like you're a guide in that respect. Like you come back to a guide who can then allow you to have that moment with yourself to
Mm-hmm.
learn what it is that you're looking for. Because I find, I don't know, I've
Mm-hmm.
found it a lot of people that I've worked with, it's like they go from one thing to the next, trying to find the answers, but the answer is always where they're not looking. It's inside. So it's taking that moment to actually just be and sit and go, okay, this is what's going on. I've now like again, I'm integrating everything that I'm doing and
Mm-hmm.
being here, and then yeah, coming back to a guy like you and go a little bit more about what you're actually doing and what you're offering, and then what you like, how you're helping people in your field, and we might wrap it up there soon.
Yeah, awesome. The big focus for me, I'm working a bit in productivity. I'm pretty much just trying to find an element of the work I do so that I can tie it in for people. And I think productivity is like, how do we get out of our own way so we can get things done? That's pretty much the gist of where I'm at. But my model is around handling your own mind differently so that you can be productive, turning what you know into what you do,
Mm.
especially for men. I'm finding. So I teach like 6 skills. We work on those in session. I do it. Valued action is the result we want. If someone's doing the work and they're on their values and they're doing it regularly, then most of the other skills aren't helpful. But if someone gets stuck, we use the choice point. We contact the present moment, which is classic mindfulness. We observe the mind and we make space for thoughts and feelings. That's pretty much the entire model I use. And
Mm.
we teach people skills, experiential skills to do that work. So yeah, if you're happy to put a link in underneath, then people can get on a free consult call with me and have a chat and figure out whether it's a good fit. If not, I'm always happy to recommend other people in our community. There's plenty of people who've done some work. I like the whole two mountains approach. You might have heard me talk about that one, where it's
Mm.
like everyone looks at it like we're climbing the same mountain, and someone needs to be at the top so that you can look down. But the reality is, it's more like two mountains on either side of a valley,
Mm.
and I don't need to be ahead of you to help you see where you take the next step or where your path might lead. That's the value of having a guide or someone external that can help you see where's next views. So I like the whole two mountains thing,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that's the same thing with like plenty of people where I'm flicking your way who have that interest in some of these formal practices, exploring some of the experiential side, getting started with this because yeah, I think unless you experience meditation, I don't think there's many people who get it. Like you can cognitively get it, but you don't get it unless you
Yeah.
try it.
Yeah. And it's
Mm.
like anything, it's like going to a coach like yourself, going to someone like myself or a yoga teacher or whatever, or a strength and conditioning coach. You're only as good as the program that you're not doing. So if you're not doing the program, or you're not doing your
Mm.
meditation, you're not doing the goals and stuff that you've set out, you're going to continue spinning your wheels. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's like the same thing with meditations. And that's the biggest thing that I find with people is like you're not consistently doing meditation, so the mind is
Mm-hmm.
consistently getting told, okay, that doesn't work. And then you're just compounding that it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So then when you
Mm-hmm.
actually want to sit and actually work on it, you've got to then shed all of this oh, it doesn't work sort of story. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's coming back to that, what is actually occurring? Why am I doing it? I'm trying to better my
Mm-hmm.
mind, or I'm trying to better myself, my awareness, my reactiveness,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a tool that's going to help me. And then you get your coaches and stuff that layer on top of that that are who have specialties, and you
Mm-hmm.
you're a lot stronger, a lot better, a lot smarter, a lot healthier person for it. So yeah,
Yeah. Save your time. That's the idea of a coach.
literally it
Get where you
says
want to go with yeah, without having to do all the research yourself over 10 years.
yeah, and then eventually then you're helping someone down the track because you've learned so much that you can then go, okay, wait, this is what I'm doing. So well,
Absolutely.
John, thank you so much for
Brilliant, bro.
coming on today.
Great.
That was fun. I really enjoyed that. So where can everybody reach you? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Valued Action Man on Insta and YouTube. And yeah, in those they have links to my my call for the free consulting call to get on the chat, and that'd be the starting point to start working with us.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on and have a good day.
Mm.